All right, we're back on MorningLine, our final segment with our guest, Hedy Weinberg of the ACLU. It's good to have her joining us, and we had a couple calls through the break. Lost one of them, but we've got Ron up next, Hedy, so let's take a call from Ron. Ron, are you there, sir?
Yeah.
Hey, go ahead, Ron.
About that abortion, that's between the woman and the Lord. That's not for some old men to decide behind closed doors how a woman should carry a child for 9 months. How many of those old men, or any man, as far as that's concerned, would carry a child in his body for 9 months that he did not want? It affects the child's well-being as well as the woman. And the child, if it is a child, will go straight to heaven. But the decision is between that woman and her Lord. And men should not be involved in those decisions. Now, if they wanted to put it as a public vote and allow the whole public to vote on it and allow just the women to vote, maybe so. But men, should not be their decision.
Okay, interesting. And I apologize. We lost the connection with Hedy Weinberg. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get her back up because I'm sure she would agree with you on that. But what I was going to ask her on the other hand, and she talks about how that should be the women's choice, and I'm just speaking on behalf of those who I know also are very much in favor of this bill that's passed here in Tennessee, is they're like, well, who speaks for the unborn child and the rights of the unborn child? You understand the rights of the mother, but what about the unborn child and the rights that they may or may not have? And then again, that gets into the whole debate behind all of this. And that's what I think we're going to be seeing at the Supreme Court level. Now, this legislation, Hedy, before we lost her, said she's not clear on whether or not the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, is ready to take on a case like this or not. I think she would acknowledge, and she did just before the last break, that sooner or later one of these cases is going to get there. And I think the Tennessee case may be the one. So what that means is Hedy Weinberg and two of the other organizations, I believe, also involved, have already filed suit challenging an injunction for when the governor signs this, it will be held until the courts can hear. And based on Roe v. Wade, it's very likely that these appellate courts, or Court of Appeals or district courts, will rule that it is unconstitutional, in which case the state will continue to appeal through the courts until it finally gets to the U.S. Supreme Court. And as we know, there are some new justices, appointed by President Trump. And will they have a different take on things than past Supreme Courts have? And that's where they're looking at. Will there be a time where Roe v. Wade and that precedent, which makes it a constitutional right, is overturned, in which case it'll change everything. The one point that Hedy made is that it's very likely states will continue, in individual states, to have their own self-determination on whether or not they want abortion on the books. And so it's entirely possible that if it's banned here in Tennessee, a neighboring state or someplace else around the country, it'll have a state where abortions are legal. And if that's the case, then those who have resources, even though it's illegal in Tennessee, if they choose to seek an abortion, will be able to go to California and have one done. But those without resources will not. And I think one of the things Jack was talking about is some of those days when abortion was illegal, that there would be people that go for those so-called back alley abortions, and that would result in some horrific results medically for folks. So that's how it shakes out. And I know that the ACLU will be following this one through. The mask on, we can hit on that in just a moment. But I just wanted to say again, this is the bill that passed both the House and the Senate, one of the most restrictive. Just wanted to give you the basics on what passed Tennessee. The legislation criminalizes medical professionals who perform an abortion after 6 weeks and restricts the reasons a woman can have an abortion. The bill also includes language prohibiting abortion at multiple points in a woman's pregnancy. An attempt to ensure that abortion access is taken away even if the courts strike down the 6-week abortion ban portion of the bill. The bill requires a woman seeking an abortion to undergo an ultrasound and the doctor to describe to her what she sees so she understands it completely through. But it effectively would outlaw abortion in the state of Tennessee. So as they say, one of the more restrictive bills. And as I said, a lot of people in Tennessee, I think, have been pushing and supporting this. I think there are others who say this goes too far, but ultimately it's probably going to make its way through the courts, and before it takes effect, it'll go to the U.S. Supreme Court, and maybe this bill out of Tennessee, this law out of Tennessee, will become the test case that finally challenges this court on whether or not they'll overturn Roe v. Wade. All right. One other thing I was going to ask Hedy Weinberg was, and again, I apologize with the ACLU, we lost her today, but the requirements, and a lot of people talking. As of today, many of you know that Metro has passed a mandate, an ordinance, which requires that you wear a mask in the city if you're not able to safely social distance. Now, maybe she's joining us back on line one. I want to get her on this as we just wrap up the show on. Hedy, thanks for joining us. I'm sorry we lost the signal with you, but we got you on the phone now. Wanted to ask you on just your take. When people right now, for instance, here in the city of Nashville, some of them are upset saying, well, it's not right. I have civil liberties. You shouldn't be able to mandate that I have to wear a mask. What does the ACLU think about mandates for health purposes when it comes to wearing a mask?
Sure. You know, we're living in a time now none of us have ever experienced, a worldwide pandemic with a lot of other stresses and tensions, a real spotlight on the structural racism and the need to kind of dismantle systemic racism, and the tensions are high. But we have to remember we're all in this together. And during a pandemic, during a state of emergency, we need to be guided by the public health community and what they say. And right now they're saying masks need to be worn to protect not only the individual but all of us. At the same time, ACLU has always taken the position that during these crisis moments, that the least restrictive mode, the least restrictive requirement should be in place. I think there has been quite some time where everyone's acknowledged that some more than others, that their right to wear a mask is totally up to them. But the decision now is driven by public health. What we would hope is that we don't see people fined and certainly arrested for not wearing masks, because that's not going to solve the problem. But I think there's a real need for a collective commitment to move through this pandemic. And it's a very painful, scary journey. And rather than challenging each other, you know, and this might just be more my voice, but I think ACLU has always believed that, you know, there are times and places where civil liberties are lifted, but they need to be lifted in a way that is not only thoughtful, but guided by, in this case, the public health knowledge that we are very clearly getting, recognizing that no one quite understands COVID-19. So again, I understand everyone's going to have a different position, but I think at the same time, there's a recognition that when you're in a state of emergency, when you're dealing with a public health crisis, there's certain things that government does have the right to pursue.
And we should say, and I don't know, just off the top of my head, I guess if I thought about it, I'd come up with one, but this would not be the first time there have been mandates like this with regard to public health issues that sometimes, at least temporarily, lightly infringe on some civil liberties by asking the citizens to do something for the greater good.
Exactly, and I think that's part of the conversation, and one needs to understand where the resistance is coming from. These are not just political statements made by people that are just pushing their own agenda. We're talking about, you know, public health experts who are studying COVID-19, who are recognizing that they've never seen anything like this before and don't really know what to expect next. I mean, as we just listen to what's happened the last 3 months and listen to scientists, you know, there was a moment where people were saying masks aren't that important. Well, now understanding that COVID-19 can, you know, touch you very different ways, and that it's not just sneezing in someone's face. It is also the sweat that, you know, spills out when you're running. There are all sorts of reasons. Again, I would never assume to know what the public health experts know and are thinking, but I certainly think there needs to be some trust, because all of us recognize that during this pandemic, lives are being lost. Over 100,000 in this country.
That
and
needs to be
Tennessee is
something.
on a surge.
I know it is, and that's something we all have to think about and to protect ourselves and others. Listen, Hedy Weinberg with the ACLU, thanks for joining us. It's always nice talking to you, Hedy. You and I go back a long ways, and I appreciate, I know how busy you are, you taking time out to talk to me on the show this morning.
Well, great talking to you too, Nick. And
Okay.
Good to hear everyone's voice.
Well,
Bye-bye.
take care of
Thank you.
yourself, ma'am. Thank you. And, you know, just as we go to the break, an interesting kind of comparison, not that it's exactly the same, when you talk about, well, you know, in public places now I'm being told I have to wear a mask. Well, think about it. Now, again, you can choose to do as you please in your home or in private areas, perhaps, okay? If you don't want to, you don't have to wear the mask then when you're at home. But think about it. Already, if you're a smoker, you're not allowed to smoke in a public place around other people. There are signs in public offices, no smoking, all right? Why? Because that is a hazard to other people as well as not just yourself. So I kind of look at it that way. It's for the public good. We'll take a break. Programming note right after this.